This is The Chris Berry Show. Expert information on elder law, retirement, and estate planning. Information that you can understand. Here's your host, Chris Berry.
Welcome to The Chris Berry Show, where we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. And each week we like to start off with a positive focus, something positive that happened within the last week, either personally or professionally. And for my positive focus this week, I'm going to talk about the kids going back to school. So we loaded them up on the bus, and it's kind of interesting because in our community, they actually start before Labor Day versus some other communities, they start after Labor Day. So they go for a couple days, and then they have a long weekend. So it's kind of disjointed, a little bit weird. But it was great to see my son, Ryan. He's a pro at this now. He's going into third grade. He got to see all his friends at the bus stop. And then my daughter, Madison, we're pretty excited because she was going to Montessori school for a couple of years. But now this is her first year in kindergarten. So she got to ride the same bus as her brother, Ryan, which was kind of fun. And then we're looking at it just the way they do schooling these days of before they go to like middle school, that type of thing. They're only going to be in the same school, or I think riding the same bus only for maybe two years out of the years that they're together, just with the way the busing works. But it was kind of interesting and great to watch them get on the bus and start school. And it was interesting all the stuff that we had to do to prepare them for school, getting their new clothes and backpacks and lunch boxes, and they got to meet their teachers, and each teacher has kind of different rules around food. It's like amazing the amount of planning just getting people off to school and starting the school year. And what is kind of even more interesting is that a lot of times people spend more time planning for that or planning for a vacation than they do even for retirement or estate planning, because it's important to have a plan versus just operating in a crisis. So we put a lot of effort into making sure they get off to school, and they had a great first day and first week of school. And I'm just appreciate their love of learning as well. Both of them were pretty excited to go back to school, meet all their friends, and just like their dad, they love learning, constantly learning. So it's pretty exciting. So school season is starting. And with that, one of the things that it made me think about was if you do have minor children, the things you need to think about from an estate and financial planning aspect. Because what we find, and typically on the Chris Berry Show, we talk about planning for the second half of life, but also there's some planning that needs to be done in the first half of life as well. So while you're working and you have young children, minor children, there's certain things that you need to take into account. And the first one is that you never know when life's going to happen. So God forbid something were to happen, if you were to pass away, what's going to happen with those kiddos? And so we don't want to think about it, and too often as parents, when we're working and just stuck in the day-to-day of getting them off to school and all that goes along with that, it's easy to put your head in the sand and just imagine that nothing bad can happen to me. But unfortunately, bad things do happen. And so we need to plan and protect ourselves from that. And so that comes into both an estate planning perspective as well as a financial planning perspective. So from an estate planning perspective, the important things to think about would be twofold. First of all, what happens if I were to pass away? Who's going to step in and serve as a guardian? And then the second piece of that puzzle is who's going to manage the money? Okay, so the role of a guardian, that's something that's going to be named in the will. So who's going to step in and be that guardian for your children? It could be a sibling, could be a parent, could be a close family friend. And it's really the biggest stumbling block that stops a lot of adults who have minor children from doing their planning, is that they can't think of who that perfect guardian would be, who can replace me as a parent. And it's a difficult situation and difficult to think about, but you need to remember that whoever you come up with is going to be better than leaving it up to the courts to decide. So it's important to have that role of guardianship, and that's something that's handled in a will. And a lot of times families first think about this when they're going on a trip, maybe the first vacation where they're leaving the kids at home, maybe with siblings or parents or friends, and they're going to be babysitting for a couple days. And they think, oh no, what happens if the plane goes down? And we get that call all the time of like, hey, we're about to take a trip. We're going to be leaving in a week, and we just realized that now we might want to put together some type of plan. And so a lot of times families will rush to get something down or even write something down themselves. But just plan ahead. Take some time to actually think about it versus just waiting until, I'm taking my first vacation. We're flying out of town. I need to get something down real quick. So the first thing we need to think about is that guardianship role. So who's going to serve as parent? And it's good to have at least 2 sets of backups. So if something were to happen to that first set of backups, you have those backup guardians in place. And it should be someone that's kind of in line with your values, your beliefs, maybe your religion, has similar parenting styles. Because who your friends might be or siblings or parents, you might have differing styles of parenting. So you want to think about who would be the best kind of substitute parent, understanding that they could never fill the role that you do. And then the second piece of it is who's going to manage that money, okay? So my kids right now are 8 and 5. If I were to pass away and leave all my life insurance to them, then they're going to spend all that money on Legos, which I think would be pretty cool, but probably not the best use of that money. So we need to appoint what's called a trustee. And so in addition to that will that appoints guardians, a lot of times, at the very least, when you're younger and you do have minor children, you want to have a basic revocable trust because you don't want anything to end up going through probate. And so with that trust, what you would do is you would appoint someone to manage the money for the benefit of the children. So think of a trust kind of like a suitcase, okay? You put things into that suitcase, you pass away, you pass that suitcase on to your successor trustee, who then manages the money. A lot of times we put in language to say that they manage the money for those young beneficiaries until they reach a certain age. Because in Michigan, once you turn 18, legally you're an adult. Now, that doesn't mean you're making adult-like decisions. So that's why a lot of times when families are setting up their first estate plan when they have young minor children, they say they don't want it to go outright to the kids at age 18, but instead they want that trustee to manage that money in the trust for the benefit of the beneficiaries until maybe age 25 or even 30, with the idea that that trustee can use the money to pay for college, pay for braces, pay for the support. And so sometimes the same person you name as a guardian is also the trustee. Other times it might be different because sometimes you might want to check and balance. So the advantage of having a same person as guardian as well as trustee is that they are boots on the ground. They know what the child needs or the children need, and it's very straightforward for them to access the funds in the trust. Now, they can't just go and use the money for their own benefit. It has to benefit the minor children, the beneficiaries. But if you're concerned with that guardian, maybe kind of doing things they shouldn't be, or maybe that the person that is a guardian isn't the best with money, then you can always appoint someone else as a trustee. So let's say that you have some siblings. If you were to pass away, you want your sister to be the guardian, to raise the children, take them to school, that type of thing. But then you don't necessarily trust your sister in terms of finances, not that she's going to do anything dishonest, but maybe she's just not the best with money. So maybe in that situation, your brother, who maybe has a financial background, you'd want to manage the trust, manage the money in the trust, so that then the trustee could basically put that guardian on a budget to say, okay, you need $4,000 a month for support for these kids and pay for school and that type of thing. And then if, let's say, there was something one-off that was necessary, like braces, then the guardian could go to the trustee and say, hey, trustee, we need $5,000 for braces. Is that okay? And then, of course, the trustee would say yes and pay those bills. So there's some pros and cons. You can either name the same person as guardian and trustee, or you can name different people so that you have more of a check and balance. The downside of naming separate people is that logistically it becomes more of a hassle as well as a dynamic where you have one person controlling the purse strings, the other person has to go to them for the assets. So there's pros and cons. And with both of these roles, the guardian and trustee, it's good to have name your successor, your backup, plus it's good to have one other person after that. So typically we like to see 2 backup guardians or 2 backup trustees. And one of the things that we see sometimes is that we'll see families name maybe a husband and wife team as a guardian. And I caution against that just because what happens if something happens what happens if they get divorced, okay? Where should the children go? So typically in that situation, we like to name just one guardian followed by one successor guardian. Because typically out of the two of them, of the married couple, generally it's one of them that you feel more comfortable serving the role as a guardian. So that's some things to think about from a legal perspective or estate planning perspective with regards to being an adult with minor children. So even though typically on the Chris Berry Show we talk about planning for the second half of life with school starting and the kids going back to school, I thought it would be important to at least talk about some of the basics for the first half of life. And now the other piece of the puzzle is from a financial planning standpoint of what are the things that we need to think about with regards to young children? And so we're still going to follow that bucket planning approach of looking at how do we need to utilize our money over a period of time, so over the next 10 years and 20 years. And so your now bucket of money should be any planned expenses for the year, so maybe you're taking a big trip. And you need to make sure that you have money to pay for that trip. So that money should be safe and liquid and available. And then in our later bucket, that's typically our retirement, where we're putting our 401k or our Roth 401k, IRAs, that type of thing. But then that soon bucket of money is basically the next 10 years. So what are the things that you're going to need to pay for the next 10 years? So one of those might be private school. If your children are going to private school, you want to make sure that that money is available. So in our later bucket of money, typically that money is invested more aggressively. But in that soon bucket of money, we want that a little bit more conservative, because if we have a big 2008 and we're paying for private school, or we have braces that we needed to make a withdrawal from or distribution from our assets, well, we could be in a world of hurt if we have to make a distribution, versus if we've properly planned and that money is invested more conservatively. If there is a downturn, we're not so concerned in the later bucket because we're not going to have to draw on that money. But in that soon bucket, we would be more concerned. And then what about college funding? So I was blessed and lucky, and thank you, Mom and Dad, that my college was taken care of for me. And so it's something that's important to take care of my kids' college education as well. And there's different ways that you can look at doing that. So you can look at things like 529s or permanent life insurance, index universal life insurance, or I was meeting with some clients a little while ago, and they have some grandkids, and so they want to help pay for their grandkids' college education. And so what they're going to do is they're going to use their own Roth IRAs, where the money can grow tax-free, and then when they withdraw it, they can then withdraw that money and then use it to gift to the grandchildren to help pay for college education. So that's one of the big things from a financial planning standpoint, is thinking about college funding, private school, braces, vacations. So those are all things that need to be taken into account. And too often it seems like most young parents have a now bucket and a later bucket, but they don't have that soon bucket of money. That money that's going to fund maybe college in 5 or 10 years, or pay for braces, or that big bucket list vacation that you're going to take with a family. So that money should be invested more conservatively. So I hope that was helpful. I thought it would be important with school starting, that if you do have young children, or maybe this is something you can share with your children, to share with the grandchildren, to cover just some of the things to think about with regards to having minor kids. So typically we do talk about the second half of life. Today I want to spend some time talking about the first half of life as those kiddies are going back to school. And then in the second segment, we really are going to focus on a second half of life issue. And that is, we're going to have Maggie Givens from the Alzheimer's Association coming on to share some about Alzheimer's, share about some of the early signs of Alzheimer's and dementia, and talk about the walk to end Alzheimer's. And Maggie manages, I want to say, 11 different walks, and she's the walk manager for the association for our walk as well. And our walk is going to be September 29th in Brighton. And if you want some more information on that, you can go to thechrisberryshow.com, where you can get some information. You can even sign up. You can donate as well. And then also one of the things that I'm excited to announce is that September 19th at our Brighton office, we're going to have a member of the Alzheimer's Association presenting at our office at 6 p.m. on the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. And Maggie will talk a little bit about that in our next segment. But if you're concerned about Alzheimer's, maybe you have a family member who's starting to slip a little bit and you want to learn more from the Alzheimer's Association, and you want to attend an in-person workshop, we're going to be having one September 19th at 6 p.m. at our Brighton office. Now, to register, you can either call in our normal number, but we'd prefer you to call and register directly with the Alzheimer's Association. So if you do want to register for that September 19th, 6 p.m., 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's, please call 800-272-3900. Again, 800-272-3700. Let me try that again. 800-272-3900. And that'll register you directly with the Alzheimer's Association. Now, if you do want more information on that workshop, you can call us anytime at 810-355-2584. But if you do want to register for that workshop, 10 Early Signs of Alzheimer's, the number is 800-272-3900. And we'll also have that information in the show notes if you go to thechrisberryshow.com. So that's going to be our next segment. And then the following segment, we're going to get into some questions and answers. Some of our listeners' questions, we're going to get a chance to answer those on air. So join us after the break as we bring in Maggie Givens from the Alzheimer's Association.
If you or a loved one is facing long-term care costs, make sure you talk with certified elder law attorney Chris Berry from the Elder Care Firm, like Sherry Skelton and her family did from Fenton.
It's really scary when you know that your parent deserves a certain quality of life and you're not able to afford it unless you get these benefits. And that was the place where we were at. We were like, we couldn't take care of her. We all had families of our own. We all worked. And of course, we wanted her in the best possible place that we could afford. And none of that would have been, we never would have been able to do that if it wasn't for them. I always recommend Chris. And I always tell people when they have any questions, I just say, you know what, you need to contact this guy because I can't even begin to tell you what he did for my family.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Protect your assets from probate, long-term care costs, the IRS, and get the governmental benefits you deserve. Visit theeldercarefirm.com today or call 810-214-3800.
And welcome back to the Chris Berry Show. This is your host, Chris Berry, where every week we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. And this week we're very excited to have Maggie Givens from the Alzheimer's Association back on the show. Welcome back, Maggie.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we had you back in a previous episode, but with it being September and the Walk to End Alzheimer's coming up, thought it would be great to have you back on the show. So, and I'm going to ask you a couple questions to help our listeners understand. First, let's start off with what is Alzheimer's?
Mm-hmm. So Alzheimer's and dementia are a term for the decline of cognitive function in the brain. So this is a change from normal function. So something that we once were able to do that we're no longer able to do is really the definition of that dementia and Alzheimer's. And Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. So dementia is kind of that umbrella term. There's many different types of dementia, but Alzheimer's is the most common and the most heard of.
Sure. And so you work with the Alzheimer's Association. What is the Alzheimer's Association and what is your role?
So the Alzheimer's Association, we are providing care and support for those that are affected through our programs and services. Our services that we provide, we do care consults, so one-on-one conversations with a social worker. We have programs in education that we go out in the community and educate the public about what Alzheimer's is, different care abilities that we can use, communication tips, things like that. And then we are also advocating for with the government for funding through the NIH, the National Institute of Health, for research. And that's a big pillar of ours, is to really find a way to stop this thing or slow it down.
Sure. So I kind of heard two things there. One, services for those who have family members experiencing Alzheimer's, and then the advocacy fighting for research. So if we have a family member who has a loved one who has Alzheimer's, how do they reach out, or what should they be looking for with assistance from the Alzheimer's Association?
Yeah. So I would say our number one resource is our 24-hour, 7 days a week helpline. We have a person on call, a trained social worker, that sometimes this disease feels very isolating, that folks just feel like there's nobody out there that understands. So we have somebody there that can speak to them about communication tips or care planning, what's going to be coming up in this disease. So our 800 number is our 800-272-3900. And that is the best way to get a hold of us from the beginning. And then alz.org is this plethora, this library of this immense amount of information. Again, just everything that you could ever want to know about the disease, about what the progress through this disease looks like. So those are the first two steps. But that 800 number is a great way to get in touch with us.
Sure. Yeah. And so for the listeners of the Chris Berry Show, if you go to thechrisberryshow.com, you can read the show notes. And what we'll do is we'll have that number in the show notes as well as that website. But for our listeners, one more time, what is that number?
Yeah, that number is 800-272-3900. And again, that's a 24-hour, 7 days a week helpline. Doesn't matter if it's Christmas Eve and you happen to be at Grandma's house and you see a change in Grandma, there's a person there for you to talk to.
Is it always you?
It's not always me. It's not always me.
And then the second thing that you talked about was the advocacy. Could you talk a little bit about what advocacy is going on, or how someone can learn more about that?
Yeah. So again, our website is a great place for you to start. But our work that we've been doing with our legislators and the people that are making decisions for us, we are out there advocating with them and for them, for those people that don't have a voice anymore, just asking for increases in funding, asking for some support services through the government services to provide care and support for families. We know that this is an expensive disease. We know that this is a disease that can debilitate your finances. That's something that you've talked about extensively, and that's something that we know that we need that support, the trajectory of this disease. Right now, there's 5.7 million Americans that are being affected by this disease currently, and that's supposed to triple by 2050. So there are so many people that need this help, and this could absolutely bankrupt our country if the government and the Alzheimer's Association aren't able to work together for more help.
Yeah, and so that's, I think, where the Walk to End Alzheimer's comes into play, as a way to raise money for the walk, for research, for advocacy, right?
Yeah, so our Walk to End Alzheimer's is our largest effort that we have. We have over 625 across the nation, which is really spectacular. We raised collectively $89 million last year as an association just through our Walk to End Alzheimer's, and that's hundreds and thousands of people across the nation coming together. It's a support group because it's our largest support group, we say, because people can really come together and see how many people are affected. And once you start talking about it and sharing it out on social media, or really just coming to the event and seeing the amount of people that have been personally affected by this disease, it's really a testament to how strong we can be together. So yes, we are spreading awareness, but we're also raising that money so that we can provide those services right here in our own counties, as well as across the nation, and then put a significant amount of money towards research. We actually, as the Alzheimer's Association, are now funding some of our own research grants, which we've never been able to do before. And that comes directly from some of the donations and the fundraisers that are coming from the Walk to End Alzheimer's.
That's awesome. And so I know you help organize multiple walks. How many walks have you done already?
We have 2 out of 11. Well, actually 3, because the Detroit Walk just happened last week also.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and our walk to End Alzheimer's is going to be September 29th in Livingston County. And last year, do you remember how much we raised as a walk?
Yep, we raised over $137,000, which was incredible.
Yeah. And so we have a team, we sponsor a team, and last year I think we raised over $11,000. And if you want to help contribute or join the walk, you can join us at alzeldercare.com, or if you can go to thechrisberryshow.com, click through the link, and there's a spot where you can either join us for the walk or you can help donate. So is there any cost to participate in the walk or fees or anything? Is it like a 5K where you have to pay X amount of dollars? How's that work?
That's a great question. We really want this to be a day where everybody can come together. So we don't want to have any restrictions. So we actually do not have a registration fee. So anybody and everybody from a 1-year-old all the way up to a 99-year-old can come and participate. Or I guess if you're over 99, you can still come. We're inclusive. We want everybody to come. So there's no registration fee. To get a T-shirt, we have different T-shirts every year, which are pretty collectible. Everybody's really excited for them. You have to raise or make a self-donation of at least $100.
Okay, all right. And how long have you been involved with the Alzheimer's Association?
So this is my 4th walk. I'm really excited. My 4th walk season. I started in some different events, but really proud and glad of all the work that we've done. Last year as a chapter for the Michigan Great Lakes chapter, we raised over $1 million for the first time just through our walks. Yeah. So that was something we were really proud of, that these Walk to End Alzheimer's are just reaching so many more people than they were even 4 short years ago.
Sure. And what's, I guess, your connection to Alzheimer's? What makes you want to raise money and walk and put forth all this effort?
Yeah, so when I first started with the association, I didn't have a personal connection. And in the last year or so, we've lost 4 close family members to this disease. So that's part of my connection. But my other connection is I have 2 little guys at home, just, as you know. And right now, there are currently no survivors of Alzheimer's. There's no way to stop it, slow it down, or cure it. And I know that one day I want my little guys to be able to wear a shirt that says I'm a survivor of Alzheimer's. Sure. I don't want them to have to see me go through this journey. I don't want to forget the day that I walked down the aisle to marry my husband. Right. So that's really the personal driver for me is my family and all the families that I've been connected to, many of them, but the stories that I'm able to share and be the voice for those families, that's really what is the driver and keeps me going every day. Sure. That honor.
Yeah. So, and probably everyone listening doesn't necessarily have a personal connection, but I'm sure a lot of our listeners do. What if you don't have necessarily a personal connection? Why should someone care or get involved?
Absolutely. So like I said, that this is going to absolutely bankrupt our government if we do not do something about it. And that's going to affect everybody. And if you have a brain, which I'm pretty sure everybody that's listening, you're at risk. Right now, there's nothing definitive that says if you do this, you will not get this, or if you do this, you will get this. So everyone that has a brain is at risk for Alzheimer's. So everyone should be aware. And we're really just fighting for that future and really standing up and saying, hey, we can't let this happen. And we're also honoring those people. You might not know somebody who has Alzheimer's or dementia themselves, but you know someone who knows somebody. Sure. So this really has affected every single person out there. And that's why we ask you to just come out and help us celebrate the successes that we've had and really fight for that future and honor those that we've lost already.
Sure. Yeah. And so for the people who do have family members affected, they know how it works. But maybe if you remember, we're at that community event. Maybe you could tell that story of how it can affect someone and what it might look like, because I thought it was a poignant story. Yeah,
I think what you're talking about is the guy that came up to me. So we were just wrapping up one of our walks, and Brighton's my hometown. So that you're not supposed to have favorite children, right? Yeah, right. But we all sometimes do, depending on the day. You're not supposed to have a favorite walk, but Brighton's my favorite. And I say that. I'm very aware. Everybody else knows it. But so standing on Main Street and being part of a group of 800 folks, that was really a moving, touching thing for me. And we were wrapping up. We were packing up cars. It had been a long day. And this gentleman walked up to me, and he was holding the hand of his wife, and who had a very blank stare on her face, which I knew probably was living with this disease. And he said to me, is your event over? And I said, yes, it is, but I work for the Alzheimer's Association. How can I help you? And the man took money out of his pocket and said, will you still take a donation? I said, absolutely, sir. And he pulled money, and he started to peel money off of his money clip, and he ended up taking all of the money out of his money clip and handed it over to me and just said, just take it, take all that I have and do something about this.
Yeah. It can have devastating effects on families. If you remember that story about the belt, Can you tell that one?
Yeah.
Because I think that'll be a great way where if you don't have someone who's affected by this, just understanding like what an emotional effect it can have.
Absolutely. So we have a program that we talk about our 10 warning signs. So know the 10 signs of Alzheimer's. I'm very forgetful. I told you when I walked in, I couldn't find my wallet. I was digging through my car trying to find my wallet. That doesn't mean I have dementia. That just means that I'm forgetful, and I've always been forgetful. But some of the warning signs that we hear from people are things like not knowing how to use common things. And a woman came in our office and spoke about, she walked in a room and her husband was standing there with his belt. And she said to him, "Joe, what's going on? What are you doing?" And he looked at her and said, "I don't know what to do with this anymore." And that was a warning sign for them. That was a red flag to be able to get into that doctor and say, "Hey, there's been a change in this cognitive function. Something's going on. We need to dig a little bit deeper."
Yeah. And along those same lines, we're actually going to host a workshop with a speaker from the Alzheimer's Association. It's going to be September 19th at our Brighton office at 6 p.m., where we're going to talk about the 10 warning signs as kind of Maggie just described. And if you want to learn more about that, you can go to thechrisberryshow.com, or you can give us a call or shoot us an email anytime at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com, and we can send you some more information on that workshop. And you do have to RSVP, or you can call us at 810-355-2584 if you do want to RSVP for that 10 early signs of Alzheimer's. Seating is limited, so you do have to call ahead. So now with our walk coming up September 29th, how can people participate or get involved?
So there's many different ways that you can participate. You could start a team. You could join the team. I know the Elder Care Firm has their team, so they're always looking for more people. But you can start your team. We have companies that participate. We have schools and organizations or religious organizations that start a team, lots of churches. Lots of groups, lots of high school teams that are starting out, or your friends and family. So anyone can start a team. You don't have to have a certain amount of people on a team. Don't think you have to have 50. And you can recruit folks to come just walk with you and raise awareness and funds through that. There's lots of tools that I have that I can help you fundraise or make a self-donation. But what we really want is just folks to come out and enjoy the day. We have lots of local communities, partners that come together, our sponsors, as well as organizations that come out and entertain. We'll have a DJ. We'll have lots of fun things going on that day. It's really a family-friendly event, and we have a great new route this year. So we'll be walking around downtown Brighton and really just spreading awareness.
Yeah, it was a great event last year. In fact, some of our team members are still talking about how awesome the DJ was last year.
Yes.
And it's almost a year later. So that part's great. Now, you mentioned two things with the walk. One, building awareness, and I think in the local communities it does a great job of doing that because we're shutting down Main Street and painting the town purple, so to speak, right? But what about the funds? So we raise all this money. Where does that money go?
So that money is going back into our big pot to be able to fund the kinds of programs and services like your education program, our 800 number, which again, I said is that 24-hour, 7 days a week helpline, which is just integral to some of these folks that are getting this diagnosis in their journey. And then a lot of that is going right to research. We're so lucky in Michigan that we have so many research facilities. Research being funded by the Alzheimer's Association is going on right at U of M, MSU, at Wayne State. So a lot of that research is being done right in our backyards.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And Maggie, I just want to take time to thank you for coming on the show and trying to raise awareness for this devastating disease. It's something that, like you said, either has affected someone in your family or it's someone you know. So it's something that we all need to kind of raise awareness, raise money for, to try to fight this so that, like you said, at the end of the day, we can find some type of cure because it's one of those things that we still don't have a cure. So Maggie, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the show.
Thanks again, Chris.
Yeah. And in our next segment, we're going to get into some of our listeners' questions. And each week we take the questions and answer some of those questions right there on air. And if, again, you want more information on the Walk to End Alzheimer's, or if you want to look at joining our team or donating, you can go to thechrisberryshow.com, and there'll be a link where you can then contribute, as well as information on our 10 Early Signs workshop. Join us after the break. Thank you.
The cost of long-term care can be overwhelming. If you're dealing with long-term care costs, make plans to attend the next free informative workshop from the Elder Care Firm in Brighton. They'll show you how to protect your hard-earned assets and obtain the governmental benefits you deserve, including veterans benefits and Medicaid.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. As the only certified elder law attorney in Livingston County, I have the knowledge and estate planning strategies to help you. When you call, reserve your seat at our next workshop or schedule a free 15-minute phone consultation. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Spots are filling up for the next free Elder Care Firm workshop. Reserve your seat today by calling 810-214-3800 or visit theeldercarefirm.com. The Elder Care Firm also invites you to join them at this year's Walk to End Alzheimer's. The walk is on Saturday, October 1st in downtown Brighton. Call 810-214-3800 today.
And welcome back to the Chris Berry Show, where we talk wealth, estate, and tax planning for the second half of life. And in our third segment, we always want to get into our questions and answers. So every week we ask our listeners that if they do have any questions, they can email us at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com, or you can call us at any time and ask a question, 810-355-2584. And each week we select some of those questions to read on air and provide some guidance. Now, this is general information. We do recommend you sit down with a professional, but we think it's good information. So, again, if you do have questions, email us anytime at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com. So let's get into those questions. So this first question is, a single mother in my 40s. What are some safe ways to grow my money for retirement? This is from Donna. I have a majority of my money in CDs and 3 children I want to provide for college. And one of them is about to go into college next year. So, Donna, I always recommend that we kind of start with that bucket plan approach of looking at how are we going to, or what time frame we're going to need these different buckets of money. And so we recommend a now bucket of money that's typically safe, liquid, easy access. So think of that as the money that you're going to need within the next year or so. So that's going to be any emergency funds, any expenses, including, it sounds like, college expenses for one of your children. So that should be safe and liquid because we don't want to risk that money. And we have this thing called the pyramid of risk. The more return you chase, the more risk you're also going to have to take on. So for that would be something that would be a now bucket. And then your retirement bucket of money, that's going to be your later bucket of money. So that should be money that's invested more aggressively typically. And we have our clients do a volatility tolerance, figure out how much risk they're really willing to take on. And then in our soon bucket, that's going to be money that we need maybe over the next 10 years. So that sounds like that's going to be the college funding for your other 2 children. So you say right now you have a majority of your money in CDs. What I would recommend is maybe looking at something more aggressive for that later bucket of money, money that you're going to use in retirement, because if the market does go down, chances are it'll come back up. But for that college funding, that should be more soon bucket, more conservative form of investing. And that could be a mixture of a bond, heavy funds, CDs, that type of thing. That's appropriate for the soon bucket. So without knowing details, all I can give you is just a general framework. So for that child who's about to go to college next year, that should be pretty safe, liquid, sitting in checking, savings, money markets. Your soon bucket, you want, and this is money for the other 2 children for college, that should be more conservative. Then your later bucket of money, that's your retirement money, that should be invested more aggressively. So Donna, I hope that was helpful. Now, our next question, and this question is coming in from Pete. And Pete writes, I'm the beneficiary of a trust and $100,000 and wondered if I have a legal right to a copy of the trust or will. I've called the attorney's office where the trust was set up and have heard nothing. Well, Pete, so it sounds like you're the named beneficiary of a trust and you're trying to figure out, do you get a copy of that trust? Well, the answer kind of depends. It depends because we don't know if the individual's alive or not. If the person's still alive and it's your typical revocable living trust, they can always make changes to that. So you wouldn't be entitled to see a copy of the trust until that individual passed away. So if they're alive and well, you would have no right to see what's part of that estate plan. If you were to pass away, you would have, if you are a named beneficiary, they would have to provide you, at the very least, the information regarding your inheritance. So if the person has passed away, yes, you're entitled to at least some type of notice. If the person's still alive, because they could always make changes, you wouldn't be entitled to those estate planning documents. Okay? Now we're going to get into our third question, and our third question is coming in from Jim. So Jim writes in, is life insurance a good way to leave money to a child? So very simple question. This I would answer with yes. It's a good way because one reason is that it's tax-free. So the money that child is inheriting, they inherit that tax-free as long as you don't have an estate tax issue. So estate taxes, the way it works is the government's going to take another swipe of your assets. But as long as you have below the exemption amount, you don't owe any estate taxes. And currently, for a single individual, that number is about $11 million. So as long as you're inheriting less than $11 million, there's not any estate taxes. So that life insurance coming in, that there's no income tax or any other tax that has to be paid on that. So it is a good way to receive money. I would much rather receive tax-free life insurance money than pre-tax IRA money, that's for sure. Because a lot of times people have large qualified accounts, large pre-tax IRAs. And that tax has to be paid at some point. So what some people do is kind of use the required minimum distributions if you don't have a purpose for those to then purchase life insurance so that covers the tax liability on those pre-tax accounts when it becomes an inherited IRA. So life insurance is a good way to leave money for a child. Now, if it's a minor child, in addition to that life insurance, what you're going to want to also set up is a trust. Because, for example, I have young children, 8 and 5, and if they were to inherit any life insurance or any other assets, they'd spend it all on Legos, which I think it would be pretty cool, but probably not the best use of that money. So it's important to name a trust as a beneficiary when you have minor children. Or even adult children, because you can protect them from divorces, lawsuits, creditors, etc. So life insurance, yes, good way to leave things. But if you just rely on beneficiary designations, it's that pillowcase of money approach. You might want to rely on a trust. All right, our next question is from Bill. Bill asked, after completing a trust, how do I inform or give copies of the papers or accounts to my adult children? Bill continues, I'm not sure what or when the correct time to share my final affair information with the children. For example, the house, finances, personal possessions, etc. Well, Bill, this is a tough question to answer because it's different for every family. Some families are very private where they don't want to share anything with the next generation until they pass. And so they just tell that person that they've named next, hey, all of our stuff is located here. God forbid something happens. So that's one approach. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I see some families where they're 100% transparent, where even the kids are involved in the planning process. And sometimes we even have family meetings where we would bring in the whole family, so parents and children, to talk over what needs to happen, why they did what they did, the next steps. From a professional standpoint, I appreciate that side of things, being a little bit more transparent, because it does make that transition or that time of passing away and now the responsibility falls to the next generation. It makes it a little bit easier because you've talked about and worked out some of the issues ahead of time versus now you pass away. This is the children or trustees' first time seeing the documents. It's a time of crisis. And now they have to not only deal with the emotional baggage of the loss of you as an individual, as a loved one, but also on top of that, they need to wrap their head around for the first time what these estate planning documents entail. So from a perspective of helping our clients, I do recommend to try to be as transparent as possible with those documents. But the flip side, sometimes people don't want to necessarily share. They're more private, and I completely understand that as well. So I wouldn't say there's any right or wrong answer to that question. It really depends on your level of comfort, your level of transparency with the beneficiaries. So hopefully that was helpful, Bill. We'll get into our next question here. And our next question is, can you change a will when you're in a nursing home? So Karen asks, writes in, my mom wants her will changed but is bedridden and cannot leave the facility. Okay. Well, Karen, just because someone is in a nursing home, that doesn't automatically mean they're incapacitated or they can't sign any documents or make any changes. Especially in Michigan, we require what's called lucid moments to be able to make changes to documents. So a question I like to ask is does mom recognize you? Does she understand the nature of what she has? And does she understand the nature of what she's doing? So if we have those things, even if we had like a dementia diagnosis or Alzheimer's diagnosis, we still might be able to make updates to a will or a power of attorney. Now, families can always challenge those documents, and they could challenge it on the basis of capacity. So maybe mom didn't have the capacity to understand what she's doing, didn't have the capacity to understand the nature of the documents she was signing, or could be under fraud. Mom didn't understand what she signed. Maybe you told her it was a power of attorney, but in reality she just signed over her house to you. That would be fraud. Could be under duress, so a family member might challenge something because of duress, where you told mom that she's not going to get dinner unless she signs that document. So those could be some reasons why those documents might be challenged. But if we're just focusing on the capacity piece, as long as she understands the nature of what she's doing, even if she forgets about it later, that could be enough capacity to be able to make changes to the will. But that said, if the family is going to fight it, it does kind of raise a red flag that at the last minute there was changes being made. So something to be very careful with, and I definitely recommend you talk to an elder law attorney on that one. Okay, next is from Simon. Are there any benefits to contributing to my employee 401k over my Roth if the employer is not matching? I opened a Roth IRA years ago before I was enrolled in my company 401k plan. Now I work for the state and I'm enrolled in their 401k plan. However, the 401k plan does not match my contributions. Are there any benefits in contributing to my employer's 401k as opposed to my individual Roth IRA? Is there one that I should focus on first? And so, Simon, the answer to this question is really your thoughts with regards to where taxes are going to go in the future. So with your 401k, what you're doing is you're contributing pre-tax dollars, meaning you haven't paid any income tax, and then the account will grow, and then when you take that money out sometime after 59 and a half, you have to pay income tax. So the question is Simon, do you think that in the future that the marginal tax rates are going to be higher or lower than they are now? A lot of people think they're going to be higher, and we've talked about this a couple times on the Chris Berry Show already. But if you look at the amount of debt that this country has, $21 trillion and counting, all the baby boomers retiring, the fact that we're at one of the lowest marginal tax rates ever in the history, a lot of people think that taxes only have one direction, and they have to go up. So if that's the case, does it make more sense to pay the tax on the seed or the harvest? So with a 401k, you'd be paying on the harvest when you take that money out. Now, the Roth option, you pay the tax now. So you might pay a little more tax now, but with the idea that the money inside of that Roth grows tax-free, so that when you do decide to take that money out, that money comes out tax-free. So basically what you've done is you've gotten out of that partnership with the Internal Revenue Service. Okay, so the idea is that you pay the tax now while we're in this lower marginal tax bracket versus later. And now taking it one step further, so that's the basic answer to, do I contribute to the Roth or do I contribute to the 401k? Taking it one step further, it looks like your 401k, unlike a lot of employers, there is no match offered by the company. So one of the general guidelines I like to follow is contribute to your 401k up to the match and then look elsewhere. And Roth IRAs are the first place to look, or some type of tax-free growth. Especially if you're younger, the more you can contribute to the Roth option, the easier it will be in terms of retirement, in terms of managing taxes. Okay, so managing when we pay taxes is one of the things that we can control. We can't control the market. We can't always pick the best stock or avoid get out of the market during the downturns at the right time. And I look at that as almost gambling, but we can determine when we pay tax. And so if we feel that taxes are lower now than they're going to be in the future, doesn't it make sense to get out of that partnership with the IRS sooner rather than later? So because, Simon, there isn't a match with your 401k, and plus that money that you would put into that 401k would be pre-tax dollars that could lead to more tax in retirement. Without knowing too many more details, I would take a hard look at and maybe divert funds to that Roth option, at least as much as you can contribute. Because there's also some income requirements and that type of thing to consider as well. But a general guideline is contribute up to the match in your 401k and then look elsewhere. Now, what some forward-thinking companies are doing are offering a Roth 401k option. So that might be something to ask your plan administrator. Now, if there is a Roth 401k option, you contribute to the Roth, and then if the company matches, the match unfortunately has to go into that traditional 401k. But still, it's a match. It's free money. You always want to take that free money. So, Simon, great question. I appreciate you asking that. And then to the rest of our listeners, if you do have questions, you can give us a call anytime at 810-355-2584 or email us at askchris@thechrisberryshow.com. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. And again, if you think about what Maggie had to say in our second segment about fighting Alzheimer's, please take a minute and consider donating to the cause. You can click through to our website, which has a link there at thechrisberryshow.com, or you can join us for our event on Wednesday the 19th at 6 p.m., talking about the 10 warning signs, early detection signs of Alzheimer's. But make it a great week, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Take care. Thank you.
Learn more about Chris Berry and the Elder Care Firm by visiting online at MichiganEstatePlanning.com. That's MichiganEstatePlanning.com. You can also call Chris Berry at 888-390-4360. 888-390-4360. This program content reflects the opinions of Chris Berry and his guests, not the Elder Care Firm, Prosperity Capital Advisors, or the C.J. Berry Group, and is subject to change at any time without notice. Content provided herein is for informational purposes only and should not be used or construed as investment or legal advice or a recommendation regarding the purchase or sale of any security or to follow any legal or tax strategy. There's no guarantee that the strategist's statements, opinions, or forecast provided herein will prove to be correct. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Indices are not available for direct investment. Any investor who attempts to mimic the performance of an index would incur fees and expenses, which would reduce returns. All investing involves risk, including the potential for loss of principal. There's no guarantee that any investment plan or strategy will be successful. We recommend that you consult with a professional dedicated to your needs. This program is furnished by the Elder Care Firm.
The cost of long-term care can be overwhelming. If you're dealing with long-term care costs, make plans to attend the next free informative workshop from the Elder Care Firm in Brighton. They'll show you how to protect your hard-earned assets and obtain the governmental benefits you deserve, including veterans benefits and Medicaid.
Hello, I'm attorney Chris Berry. As the only certified elder law attorney in Livingston County, I have the knowledge and estate planning strategies to help you. When you call, reserve your seat at our next workshop or schedule a free free 15-minute phone consultation. The Elder Care Firm is here to help you and your family find solutions. Call us today.
Spots are filling up for the next free Elder Care Firm workshop. Reserve your seat today by calling 810-214-3800 or visit theeldercarefirm.com. The Elder Care Firm also invites you to join them at this year's Walk to End Alzheimer's. The walk is on Saturday, October 1st in downtown Brighton. Call 810-214-3800 today.